The first thing I saw when I woke was red skin, steel armor, and eyes that could melt a man faster than any plasma cannon. The alien warrior stood over me, her gaze sharp and unreadable, her sword pressed just below my chin. The air around us was thick with the smell of iron, smoke, and victory that didn't belong to me. I was a soldier from Earth, crashed, captured, and outnumbered in a war we barely understood. She, on the other hand, looked every inch the conqueror. Her hair, pale as starlight, was braided tight along her head, and a delicate crown of polished silver framed her face. Her lips were the color of blood, and when she spoke, her voice carried the command of someone who'd won far too many battles to be questioned. "You're the last one alive," she said, tilting her head as if deciding whether I was worth the trouble. "The others fought like insects. However, you spoke before shooting. Why?" My throat was dry, my heart racing, but for some reason my mouth chose betrayal over sense. "Because," I rasped, "it's hard to shoot someone when you're too busy noticing how good their armor looks on them." There was a pause, long enough that I could hear the hum of her blade vibrate against my neck. Her expression didn't change. Then, to my surprise, the faintest shimmer of color touched her cheeks, a darkening of red that could only mean one thing. The alien warrior was blushing. The soldiers around her, massive figures in the same polished armor, shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other but not daring to speak. She stared at me for another heartbeat before finally lowering her sword. "You speak boldly for someone unarmed," she said. "Or perhaps stupidly." I managed a small, crooked grin. "Maybe both." She studied me, her eyes narrowing like she was reading something invisible under my skin. "Take him," she ordered finally. "He amuses me." Before I could protest, two soldiers grabbed me by the arms and dragged me through the smoke-filled ruins of what had once been my outpost. The warrior queen followed behind, her steps silent despite the weight of her armor. We passed through a field of twisted metal and ash before entering her ship, a structure of black glass and light that pulsed like a living heart. The air inside was cooler, almost clean, but every surface shimmered with runes that made my head ache to look at. They placed me in a chamber surrounded by gold lattice and humming energy. Not quite a cell, not quite a throne room. She dismissed the guards with a gesture, then stood facing me alone. "You Earth soldiers," she said, circling slowly. "So fragile, yet you joke in the face of death. Tell me, is that courage or madness?" I straightened as best I could, my wrists still bound by glowing cuffs. "Depends on who's asking." "General Vale Era of the 4th Legion," she said. "Conqueror of 9 worlds. Slayer of the SYTH brood." "And you?" "Lieutenant Daniel Rice," I said. "Pilot, crash specialist, and part-time idiot, apparently." That earned the faintest twitch of her lips, something dangerously close to a smile. "Part-time?" she asked. "I'd say it's a full occupation." Despite myself, I laughed. A short, rough sound that filled the quiet chamber. She tilted her head, watching me with the curiosity of a scientist observing something rare. "You find humor in your captivity? It beats fear," I said. "Besides, if I'm going to die, I'd rather the last thing I see be someone beautiful than another explosion." Her eyes widened slightly, and she turned her face away, though I saw the flicker of that same blush again, faint beneath her crimson skin. "Flattery," she said coolly. "Won't spare you." "Not trying to be spared," I said. "Just honest." Her gaze returned to me, sharp again, though something in it had shifted. "Honesty," she murmured. "A weapon rarer than any blade." She stepped closer until I could feel the heat radiating from her armor, her scent metallic and strange but not unpleasant. "Tell me, Daniel Rice of Earth," she said, her voice soft but dangerous. "Why should I not execute you for invading my world?" I swallowed hard, then said the only thing that came to mind. "Because you didn't take prisoners today, you took an audience." For a heartbeat, silence filled the air between us. Then, impossibly, she laughed. It was a sound I hadn't expected. A low, melodic note that sent a shiver through the room. "An audience," she repeated. Do you truly think yourself so interesting, human? I must be, I said, trying not to let my nerves show. You could have killed me already. Her laughter faded, replaced by something else, curiosity, maybe even intrigue. Perhaps I enjoy your audacity, she said. Or perhaps I wish to understand why your kind speaks to their enemies as if they were lovers. I met her gaze, my pulse loud in my ears. Maybe because sometimes, I said quietly, it works. Her lips parted slightly, and for an instant I thought she might strike me, or kiss me. Instead, she turned sharply and pressed a command on her wrist console. The cuffs around my wrists released with a faint hiss. You are no longer my prisoner, she said. You are my guest. I blinked. That's generous of you. It's strategic, she replied. A guest can tell me more than a corpse. Right? I said, rubbing my wrists. So this is an interrogation? If it were, she said, stepping close enough that I could see the faint gold veins beneath her skin. You would not be standing. She studied me for a moment longer, then added, You will dine with me tonight. Refuse, and I'll assume you prefer our less comfortable hospitality. I've never been one to skip dinner, I said. Her smile returned, fleeting but real this time. Good. My people will prepare something suitable for human digestion. As long as it's not another soldier, I muttered. That earned a genuine laugh, short, sharp, but musical. You are reckless, she said, and foolish. You're not the first to say that. Perhaps, she said, turning to leave, but I might be the last. When she was gone, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. The air shimmered faintly around me, and I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Sweat-streaked, bruised, alive. I couldn't help but grin. Somehow, I'd flirted my way into the company of the galaxy's deadliest woman. And worse, judging by the way she'd looked at me, I wasn't entirely sure she hated it. The chamber they kept me in that night was larger than my old apartment back on Earth, but colder. Every surface seemed alive. Metal that breathed faintly, walls that whispered like old machines remembering what it felt like to dream. A servant brought me food, though calling it food felt generous. It was a shimmering violet liquid served in a chalice that vibrated faintly in my hands. Nutrient compound, human safe, the attendant said in a mechanical voice before vanishing as silently as it had appeared. I eyed the cup suspiciously, took one sip, and nearly gagged. It tasted like burnt cinnamon and static. Still, I drank it all. Hunger had no pride left in it. The door opened with a hiss as I set the chalice down, and she entered. Valera, the red-skinned commander whose name sounded like thunder when her soldiers said it, wore no helmet tonight. Her hair, pale and braided, framed her face in silver fire. Her armor gleamed under the low lights, every curve of metal molded like art. She looked less like a conqueror now and more like something older, regal, dangerous, alive. You look better fed, she said, stopping before me. Barely, I admitted. Your cuisine takes some getting used to. You should be honored, she said, smirking. That drink is reserved for warriors before battle. It keeps the blood from freezing in the void. Nice, I said. And what do you drink after battle? Her expression shifted, just a flicker, but there was something in it. We do not drink after victory, she said. We remember. She gestured for me to follow her, and I did. The corridor outside pulsed with golden veins that illuminated as she walked. So, I asked, falling into step beside her, what's the official policy on humans these days? I'd like to know if dinner comes before or after execution. She didn't answer at first. Then, execution is for those who threaten my world. You, Daniel, are something else. Something flattering, I hope? I said. She turned her head slightly, and the corner of her mouth lifted. Something irritating. She led me to a hall that might once have been a throne room, now transformed into a place of ritual. Massive blades hung from the walls like relics, each one engraved with alien sigils that glowed faintly. At the center stood a long table of obsidian, surrounded by low fire pits filled with blue flame. She motioned for me to sit. When I did, she sat opposite, removing her gauntlets with deliberate care. Her hands were smaller than I'd expected, the lines of her fingers traced by faint metallic veins. "You asked me earlier why I kept you alive," she said, her voice soft but deliberate. "It wasn't curiosity alone. I was kind of hoping it wasn't pity," I said. "No," she said sharply. "Never pity. I despise weakness." "Then why me?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Because no one has ever looked at me the way you did when I found you. You weren't afraid." I blinked. "That's not entirely true," I said. "I was terrified. I just hide it well." "No," she said again, leaning forward, her eyes locked on mine. "It wasn't fear. It was defiance. Like you were daring me to care." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed quiet. The blue firelight danced across her face, catching in her eyes like liquid gold. "My people were born in war," she continued. "We do not know laughter or softness. But when you spoke to me, when you looked at me, I felt something I did not recognize. Embarrassment," I offered. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "Perhaps. Or maybe the first spark of something my kind thought extinct." She studied me, her voice lower now. "We've fought for centuries to master fear. But you humans, you turn it into courage. That fascinates me." "Fascinates you enough to keep me as your prisoner?" I asked. "Honored prisoner," she corrected. "It's different." "How exactly?" I asked. "You have food, air, a bed. You're not in chains." "And the honor part?" "You get to speak freely to me," she said. "Most don't live long enough to try." "That's reassuring," I said dryly. She tilted her head, her braids catching the light. "You still joke," she said. "Even here." "Why?" "Because it keeps me human," I said simply. Her gaze softened then, a strange silence stretching between us. "I envy that," she said. "Being human?" I asked. "No," she said. "Remembering how." For a long while we said nothing. The air between us carried the soft hum of the fires, the faint rhythm of her breath. Then abruptly she stood. "Walk with me." I followed her out of the hall and up a winding path that opened into a balcony overlooking her city. I hadn't seen it until now. Towers of crimson stone and steel, glowing like veins of light across the dark horizon. The sky was alive with auroras, ribbons of blue and red swirling over distant mountains. "It's beautiful," I said quietly. "This used to be a desert," she said. "We burned half our world building this city. Every stone you see was carved from our enemies' ships. That's one way to recycle," I said. She didn't laugh, though her eyes gleamed faintly. "Our beauty was born of violence," she said. "Perhaps that's why it feels hollow now." I turned to look at her. Really look. The red of her skin caught the aurora light, shimmering like molten glass. "You don't seem hollow to me," I said. Her gaze snapped to mine, sharp but uncertain. "You don't know me." "Maybe," I said. "But I know what it looks like when someone's trying to remember what it feels like to be seen." She froze, her lips parting slightly, her expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, she seemed ready to speak. But then she looked away. "You talk too much," she said, though her tone was softer than before. "It's a human flaw," I said. "We fill the silence so we don't drown in it." Her eyes flicked toward me again. "And what are you filling it with now?" "Hope," I said. "Or stupidity. Hard to tell the difference lately." The wind picked up, carrying a low, haunting note through the city below. Valera's armor reflected the aurora as she turned toward the horizon. "Tomorrow," she said, "the council will decide what to do with you. They will want your world's coordinates. I cannot protect you if you refuse to give them." "And if I do?" I asked. "Then your species dies." She looked at me then, her voice low, pained. "If you lie, you die. If you tell the truth, they die. Either way, blood will be spilled. The only choice you have left is whose." Her words hit like gravity. I wanted to answer, but she was already walking away, her silhouette framed by the firelight and stars. "Rest, Daniel," she said. Tomorrow decides more than just your fate. When she was gone, I leaned on the railing, staring at the alien sky. Somewhere beneath the beauty of it, I could feel the weight of her words, heavy as stone. And for the first time, I realized that she wasn't my captor anymore. Not really. We were both prisoners of the same thing, the war that wouldn't let either of us be human. Sleep never came easily that night. The alien city pulsed below me like a living heart, its lights shifting from red to gold as though breathing in sync with something unseen. I lay on the strange bed, its surface firm but warm, my thoughts tangled between fear and fascination. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Veil Era, standing in the aurora's glow, eyes torn between command and conflict. There was something beneath her armor, beneath the fire that ruled her people. Something human in the way she had looked away when I spoke. When dawn came, if it could be called dawn on this world of twin suns, the light cut through my room like a blade. The door opened without a sound, and 2 guards entered. "The general requests your presence," one said in that mechanical, filtered tone that stripped away all emotion. I followed without protest. The corridors were different this morning. Quieter, tense, filled with shadows of soldiers who refused to meet my gaze. They led me to a chamber vast enough to hold a fleet. The air shimmered with heat, and at its center stood Veil Era, her armor gleaming like newly forged steel. Around her, the High Council, tall, angular figures wrapped in ceremonial robes, watched me with the kind of contempt reserved for insects. Veil Era's voice broke the silence. "Lieutenant Daniel Rice, human pilot, survivor of the Terra incursion," she said formally. "You stand before the Varanthi Council of Flame. You will answer truthfully. Do you understand?" "I do," I said, though my throat was dry. The tallest counselor stepped forward, his eyes pale and merciless. "We know your world hides weapons that burn stars," he said. "Tell us where they sleep, and you may live." I hesitated. Earth's defense systems were primitive compared to theirs, but the last thing I'd do was hand it over. "You've got the wrong guy," I said. "I'm just a pilot." The counselor's gaze darkened. "You lie." Veil Era raised a hand, halting him. "Enough," she said. "You will not harm him." "You defend the enemy?" The counselor spat. "He is mine to question," she said, her voice steel over fire. "By right of capture." A murmur rippled through the room. The counselor's tone turned venomous. "Then his blood is on your honor, General. Fail, and your flame will be extinguished with his." He turned away, the others following, their robes whispering like dry leaves. When the chamber was empty, Veil Era exhaled slowly, her composure cracking for just a moment. "You enjoy tempting death," she said, her voice quieter now. "It's kind of a bad habit," I said. "Keeps things interesting." She turned to face me, her eyes sharp. "Interesting? You just made me your enemy in front of the council. They think I've lost my mind defending you. Have you?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her lips parted slightly, and she took a step closer, her gaze dangerous but unreadable. "You don't know what you're asking." "Maybe not," I said, "but you don't seem as sure as you used to be." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned and gestured for me to follow. "Come," she said. "You should see what your people have done." We descended into the lower levels of the citadel, where the air grew cooler and the light dimmed to a steady pulse of gold. The corridors opened into a massive hangar where alien ships lay in silence, some damaged, others dismantled. But what caught my breath wasn't the ships. It was what lay at the far end. My fighter, or what was left of it. "How did you—" I started, but she cut me off. "We found it near the wastelands. You crashed deeper into our territory than we expected." She moved closer to the wreckage, her fingers tracing the broken hull. "I've seen human craft before. None like this. It's experimental," I said. "A test ship. Designed for war?" she asked. "Designed to survive it," I said. She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "You built something that endures, even when broken." "We're stubborn like that," I said. She studied me for a long moment, then placed her hand over the ship's scarred emblem. Earth's old eagle crest, blackened by plasma burns. Your world, what is it like now? I hesitated. Different, I said. Smaller, quieter. We fought too long. Every victory feels like loss now. And yet you still fight, she said softly. That's what we do, I said. We fight until something worth living for finds us again. Her eyes flickered, the gold in them dimming like fading embers. And what happens when it does? Then we stop fighting, I said, meeting her gaze. And we protect it. Her hand fell from the ship, and she looked at me differently then. Less like an enemy, more like a mirror. You speak as though you already found it, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She turned sharply and walked away, though I saw the faintest trace of a smile before she did. The guards led me back to my quarters, but the silence felt different now. The next morning I woke to alarms. The city outside blazed red as ships descended through the clouds, sleek, angular vessels that bore the mark of another empire. Valera's people scrambled in the streets, preparing for battle. The door to my chamber burst open, and she stood there again, armor half-fastened, eyes blazing. They're here, she said. The Cinder Dominion, they've come for the flame. The what? I asked. The heart of our world, she said. If they take it, everything dies, including you. She tossed me a weapon, sleek, alien, humming with power. You wanted to prove your courage, human? Now's your chance. We ran through the burning corridors as explosions shook the walls. Outside, the sky was chaos. Ships clashing like gods in firelight, plasma bolts raining down across the crimson towers. The air stank of ozone and smoke. What's the plan? I shouted over the noise. We hold the flame chamber until the fleet can rally, she yelled back. If it falls, the planet will burn from the inside out. We reached a great gate carved with runes that glowed like firebrands. Valera pressed her hand to the seal, and it opened with a thunderous crack. Inside, the chamber pulsed with pure energy, a sphere of molten light suspended above a pit of darkness. Stay close, she said. No one touches the core except me. Noted, I said, gripping the alien rifle tighter. The doors behind us exploded as Cinder troops stormed in, their armor black and jagged, their weapons shrieking with energy. Valera was already moving, her blade a blur of molten gold. I fired into the chaos, the recoil biting into my shoulder. For the first time since my capture, we fought side by side. Not as enemies, but as something else entirely. When the last cinder fell, the silence was deafening. Smoke filled the chamber, and Valera leaned against her sword, breathing hard. You fight well, she said between breaths. You too, I said. Not bad for someone I was supposed to flirt with, not fight beside. She laughed. An exhausted, unguarded sound that caught me off guard. You're insufferable, she said. But useful. She turned toward the core, its light reflecting in her eyes. The flame is unstable. The battle's weakened the containment field. Can you fix it? I asked. I can try, she said. But it may require sacrifice. The way she said it chilled me. I stepped closer, shaking my head. No, there's always another way. She looked at me then, her face illuminated by the swirling light. You don't understand, Daniel. If the flame dies, so does my world. My people. Then I'll help you save it, I said. Even if it kills me. She froze, her eyes searching mine for something. Truth. Maybe madness. You would do that? For someone worth saving? I said. Every time. She stared at me for a long moment before whispering. Then perhaps I was wrong about you, human. The ground shuddered beneath us, light spilling from the core. It's beginning, she said. We don't have long. As she turned back to the console, I realized something. For the first time, her hands were shaking, and for the first time, I wanted to hold them steady. The entire chamber pulsed like a living heart, light flaring through the runes carved into the floor. Each thrum of the planet's core sent a wave of pressure through my chest. like the world itself was trying to breathe again but choking on its own fire. Veil Era was already at the containment console. Her armor cracked from the earlier fight, her face drawn tight with focus and exhaustion. The molten glow of the core reflected across her red skin, making her look like she was sculpted out of fire. "The containment field's collapsing," she said, her voice barely carrying over the roar of energy. "If we can't rechannel the flow, the flame will ignite the entire mantle. Everything above it will burn." "You said there's a way to stabilize it," I said, stepping beside her. "There is," she said, "but it requires a tether, a life to bind the energy until it cools." She looked at me then, and for once there was no command in her eyes, only sorrow. "I'm the last one who can do it. Don't even think about it," I said, grabbing her wrist. "You're not dying for this." "I am not dying," she said, pulling free. "I'm fulfilling my purpose. The flame is my people's heart. I am its keeper." "And who decided that?" I snapped. "Some council of ghosts? You said it yourself, they only remember war." "You don't understand," she said sharply, turning back to the console. "Without the flame, we are nothing. Without it, I am nothing." "You're wrong," I said. "You're more than this war, more than some ancient promise." Her hands froze over the control pad, her jaw tightening. "You speak as if you know me." "I do," I said, "because I've seen you bleed, fight, laugh, doubt. You're more alive than anyone I've met." Her breath caught, her armor dimming as if the core itself paused to listen. "You think words can change fate?" she whispered. "They already have," I said. "You just haven't noticed yet." The ground shook violently, throwing us both off balance. Sparks rained from the ceiling as fractures split the containment ring. She steadied herself and looked toward the core, the light reflected in her eyes like liquid gold. "If the tether breaks, everything dies," she said softly. "You'll die. Then we'll fix it together," I said. "You need a life to anchor it, right? Use mine." She turned to me sharply, eyes blazing. "You don't know what you're offering. The flame doesn't share. It consumes." "So do I," I said. "Ask anyone who's met me." Despite the chaos, her lips twitched. "You're impossible," she said. "And stubborn." "You like that about me," I said. Her laughter was quick and disbelieving, the sound strange against the fury of the storm around us. "I should have killed you the moment you spoke." "Yeah, but then who'd annoy you?" Another surge hit, harder this time, cracking the platform beneath us. Energy flooded through the air in radiant ribbons. She turned back to the console, her hands moving with impossible speed, her voice falling into her native tongue, a sound like steel and thunder twisted into song. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "Redirecting the pulse," she said. "It needs a dual tether now, the energy's split. It's too unstable for one." I stepped forward. "So it needs both of us?" "Yes," she said. "But if we link, there's no guarantee we'll survive the feedback." I looked at her, and for the first time she looked afraid. Not of death, but of me sharing it. "Hey," I said, stepping closer until our foreheads almost touched. "We die together or we live together. No other option." Her eyes softened, that molten gold flickering with something almost human. "You speak as if you've known me for a lifetime," she said quietly. "Feels like it," I said. "Maybe I've just been waiting for someone stubborn enough to tell me no." Her hand rose, trembling, and she pressed her palm to my chest, over my heart. "Then let the flame judge us both." The moment her other hand touched the console, light engulfed us. It wasn't heat or pain, it was memory, flooding in waves. I saw her world before the wars. Children running beneath twin suns, cities of glass floating above oceans of gold, laughter echoing in alien tongues. And she saw mine. The deserts of earth, the storms over crumbling cities, the small kindnesses that still mattered amid ruin. The flame wove them together, binding our lives in a tapestry of color and sound that defied everything either of us had known. The energy surged outward, rising through the fractures and spreading into the sky above the city. The entire planet trembled, then steadied, the chaotic red storms fading to calm amber light. I fell to my knees, the aftershock slamming through my chest like a thunderclap. Valera caught herself on the console, her breath ragged, her armor scorched. "Did it work?" I gasped. She looked up, her eyes glowing brighter than I'd ever seen. "The flame is stable," she said. "We did it." Relief hit me so hard I almost laughed, but she was already stumbling forward, her strength fading. I caught her before she fell, her body cold to the touch, the light dimming inside her. "No," I whispered. "You're not doing this." She smiled weakly, her voice barely audible. "You shared your life with mine, Daniel. The flame took its balance. It will keep one of us alive." "Then take me," I said. "Let her have me." She shook her head slowly, tears, actual tears, burning silver trails down her cheeks. "No, human. You are the future. I was only the past." I held her close, the roar of the core fading to a steady heartbeat beneath us. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare do this." Her hand lifted, fingers brushing my jaw. "I told you once that humans burn too brightly," she said softly. "I was wrong. You don't burn out. You light everything around you." Her voice trembled, but her smile held. "And now you'll light this world." "I can't do it without you," I said. "You already are." Her body shuddered once, the gold in her eyes dimming to ember. "Valera, please." But she silenced me with a touch to my lips. "Live," she whispered. "That's how you honor me." And then she was gone, her body dissolving into light, her essence scattering into the air like embers caught on the wind. The chamber fell silent. The core stabilized, its fire now soft, steady, alive. I collapsed beside the console, the scent of ozone and warmth filling the air. When I opened my eyes again, the runes on the floor glowed faintly beneath me, spelling her name. Valera, Keeper of Flame. My chest ached, but I could still feel her there, faint but real, like a heartbeat beneath the surface of the world. I wasn't sure if it was grief or something far deeper, but as the city above began to rise again, rebuilt in her light, I knew what I had to do. I stood, picked up her fallen blade, and looked toward the core. "You're still here," I said quietly. "You'll always be here." The flame pulsed once in answer, soft and warm, and for a moment I swore I saw her silhouette reflected in its glow, watching, smiling, alive in the fire she had become. Years passed, though time felt different beneath the glow of the flame. The war that had once defined this world ended the moment Valera became part of its heart. The Varanthi no longer fought for conquest but for preservation. The same fire that once burned their enemies now nourished their lands. Cities of obsidian and glass rose from the ashes, shining in the golden light that poured from the core deep below. They called the reborn world Valera Prime, and at its center, they built a monument. A towering spire carved from the crystal remains of the chamber where she'd made her final stand. At its peak, they placed her blade, still glowing faintly, forever pointed toward the stars. And at its base, they carved words I hadn't known they understood. She chose to feel. I visited that spire every dawn, when the twin suns crossed paths over the horizon, and the air shimmered with the warmth she'd left behind. The Varanthi called me Keeper of the Flame, but the truth was simpler. I was just the man she'd spared, trying to live up to her faith in me. Her people didn't trust me at first, not entirely. The human who had stood beside their queen, who had shared her light, it made them uneasy. Some bowed when I passed. Others spat in the dust. But over time, they began to understand. I taught them what she had once asked me about: laughter, defiance, the strange human art of hope. I told stories of Earth, not its wars, but its beauty. Oceans that shimmered like mirrors, forests that sang with wind, the scent of rain after storms. The young listened, wide-eyed, as if hearing of a dream. And slowly they began to dream too. The Varanthi learned to celebrate, to dance beneath the auroras that had once signaled only war. The flame no longer demanded sacrifice. It thrived on harmony, fed by the pulse of both human and alien life now joined through her. And in the quiet hours, when the city slept, I felt her presence in every flicker of light, every heartbeat that echoed in my chest. But peace has a way of testing its own strength. Word of the reborn world spread across the stars, drawing the attention of powers who saw its light as something to claim. Fleets gathered at the edges of the system, hungry for what they could never create. The flame was life, energy beyond comprehension, and a weapon in the wrong hands. I stood before the council one last time, the same hall where Veil Era had once defied them. "They're coming," one of the elders said. "The Cinder, the Eresh, perhaps even the remnants of your human factions. They all want the flame. Then they'll find it guarded," I said. "Guarded by what?" another asked. "You," I smiled faintly. "By her." The chamber fell silent until one of the younger officers, a woman with the same pale hair as Veil Era, rose and said, "Then we'll stand with her too." That night, the beacons across Veil Era Prime lit for the first time since the war. 1,000 fires shining like stars on the surface of the planet she had saved. The fleets arrived weeks later, surrounding the world like vultures. But when they saw the surface, a world glowing with warmth, alive with harmony, they hesitated. The flame pulsed brighter, casting light across the void, and I knew she was there, warning them. I broadcast one message to every ship, my voice steady even as my heart trembled. "This world is not yours to take. It belongs to the living, not the conquerors. If you come for the flame, you will face her fire and mine." For a long, endless silence, no one moved. Then, one by one, the ships turned away, disappearing into the black. Not because they feared destruction, but because, for the first time in millennia, they felt the weight of what her light meant. Something greater than power. Something sacred. Afterward, I returned to the spire and sat beneath her sword. The city lights shimmered below, and the air was warm, peaceful. "You'd like it now," I said softly. "They've learned to laugh again. You'd probably tell me I talk too much still." The wind carried a soft warmth against my cheek, and for a heartbeat, I felt her beside me. "You never stopped talking." Her voice seemed to whisper in the flicker of the flame. "That's why I never stopped listening." I closed my eyes and smiled. "You kept your promise," I said. "You never left my side." The warmth deepened, wrapping around me like a pulse of light. "Nor will I ever," it seemed to say. Years later, when my own body began to fail, I asked to be taken to the chamber where it had all begun. The runes still glowed beneath the crystal floor, and the core still pulsed with golden light. I stood one last time before it, leaning on her sword for balance. "You burned so bright," I whispered. "But somehow, I think you left enough of your fire for all of us." My strength faltered, and I fell to my knees. The ground beneath me hummed softly, and I felt the warmth of her light reach out, gentle, welcoming. "Veil Era," I breathed, "if you can hear me." But I didn't have to finish. The light enveloped me, weightless and calm. I saw her then. Not the warrior, not the general, but the woman I'd met beneath the firelit sky. She smiled, her eyes full of dawn. "You found me," she said. "Took me long enough," I replied. She reached out her hand, and I took it, feeling the warmth that had once saved an entire world. When I opened my eyes again, the twin suns were rising, their light spilling across the horizon. The people of Veil Era Prime would find only my cloak and her blade resting side by side, both glowing faintly as if they shared a heartbeat. They would tell stories of the human who tamed fire and the queen who became it, of the love that bound two souls from different stars. And somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, where light met shadow, we walked together. No longer prisoner and queen, no longer soldier and conqueror. Just two sparks of the same flame, burning forever. And in the whispering wind that danced through her world, one truth endured. Humanity's greatest power was never its weapons. It was its ability to make even the immortal remember how to feel.